The future of healthcare. Are we going to get rid of Obamacare once and for all, or is it going to eventually lead us to single payer?
So I'll tell you what, every one of the Democrat opponents want European-style single-payer health care, and we know the tax policy group says that's a $32 trillion debt on this country.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked about health care to be patient-driven and physician-guided, where no Washington bureaucrat gets in between the patient and their doctor. I'll give you an example. There is not a single-payer European-style health care system in the world that would have done this, and I'm going to explain it to you. My father, 83 years old, he goes into the hospital on a Friday. On Tuesday, he has quadruple bypass surgery at 83. At 85, just a couple of weeks ago, he has a full right knee replacement at 85. There is not a single-payer European-style Medicare for all system that would have given not one that would given my father given my father those two surgeries, because they would have felt his life was not worth it. Well, let me tell you something. After my father's quadruple bypass, the doctor told him, he said, "Dell, you probably had 3, maybe 6 months to live with what was going on." Mm-hmm. My father would not be around today if we had single-payer European-style, quote, Medicare for all health care, period. Mm-hmm. And we know that Obamacare has taken $162 billion out of Medicare already. And so I say this on my campaign trail. We have single-payer in this country. It's called the VA. Mm-hmm. How is that working? The best, the brightest men and women who we promised that to, right? Mm-hmm. We have some VA clinics that are very good, many that are marginal, and way too many that are poor and not taking care of our veterans that this country promised. Mm-hmm. And so how is that working for us? And every one of my opponents wants to put another 310 million people on that system.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It would be a nightmare, and so I look forward to that healthy discussion. I say again, we can't look to government or Washington to solve our problems. My opponents want to look at Washington and say they can fix it. I want to reduce to the greatest extent possible Washington, D.C. in our lives.
Okay, we did have, and we will try and take a couple of calls, but we did have one person that texted Mark with a question.
Well, yeah, we had a listener who wanted you to tell their story about, speaking of healthcare, your story about
shot in the head.
You got shot in the head.
Yeah.
That's an interesting little tidbit that we might want to know about.
Sure. So on December 16th of 1995, at the intersection of 6th Avenue East and 4th Street in Duluth, I was shot in the head by a career criminal. And here's how it happened. I stopped at a convenience store with my fiancée, who's
You were off duty. You were a policeman at that time, but off duty. Right.
And I stopped at a convenience store with, like I say, my fiancée was in the right passenger seat of the pickup. I was a driver. I get out, go buy the item in the convenience store. I get in my pickup truck, and I shut the door, and I go to latch my seatbelt. So what I'm doing is I'm reaching for my seatbelt to the left, and I'm going to put it in to the right of me, latch it. My head goes down, and all of a sudden, pow, the biggest, loudest explosion that I've ever heard. And what was that? And I look up, and there's later to be a bullet hole in my windshield, and I'm feeling a warm sensation. I look in the mirror, and there's blood coming down my head. And I said to my wife, or my fiancée, Jody, I said, "Jody, I've been just shot." And so we ran, we got out, because I didn't know where the shooter was, if he was going to try to finish us off or not.
Right.
So I ran inside the convenience store. I told the clerk, call 911, I've been shot in the head. And he grabs a phone, and he calls, and he says to the dispatcher, "There's some guy that's been shot in the head." And I grabbed the phone from him. I said, "Dispatch, this is off-duty 350 when I've been shot in the head," and the sirens came, and I gotta be, you gotta understand how comforting that was for me to hear the sirens, to hear help coming, and I think that helped me in my career during domestic situations or violent situations.
So did they get the guy?
Oh yeah, he was a career criminal, absolutely, and the unfortunate thing is the federal government would not charge him with felon in possession of a handgun.
Well,
And I was a police officer, you know.
Wow.
And there's another example of the government not doing what they can to keep a career criminal who
Right.
used a
what
firearm.
was
you know.
motive?
He was shooting at the guy wearing the long black coat, getting into the black pickup truck. That's it.
Oh my gosh.
He was
So he
ramming.
didn't know you from Adam or
No,
any?
he was trying to kill the guy getting into the black pickup truck for no other reason. Wrong place at the wrong time. And then a couple years later, while on duty in a hostage situation, I cleared the room, and suspect came running in, pointed a handgun at me 3 feet away, and surprised me. 3 feet away, pulled the trigger, and by the grace of God, it didn't go off. And so when I talk about that, it's not the firearm. It is the career criminal behind that.
Mm-hmm.
I am still a supporter of the Second Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
I carry concealed by virtue of my good standing retirement from the police department. My wife is a concealed carry permit holder. Because of that experience, we understand. There's some people that don't want to carry concealed. That's fine. That's your choice. But please don't take that opportunity away from me when I want to protect my wife, my family, and my children.
Yeah. All right.
I had another question that came from a caller, and I think it is a very good one. What are your thoughts about the war on drugs? And we're in an opioid crisis, but a lot of this is also still illegal, so-called illegal drugs. And what do you feel? I mean, is the war on drugs helpful? Is it hurtful? What do you think of that?
We shall never give up on our people, right? On the people that have addictions. Yesterday, I went to St. Gabriel's Hospital, and we talked to 2 physicians and other staff on the opioid crisis that's going on, and they're the leaders in Little Falls, Minnesota. They are the leaders in the Midwest on trying to stop it. It is an epidemic, and we need to take the people that are on the ground, boots on the ground, those doctors and those staff that understand how to not only prevent but remove and help people get off the addiction and contribute to society, and they're doing that. It is not easy. It is not easy, but I can tell you from the police standpoint, if you'd have told me when I first started my law enforcement career that I would be carrying Narcan, which reverses the effect of if you'd have told me I'd be carrying a drug like Narcan, I would have said, no way. Every police officer in the city of Duluth is assigned a Narcan kit. That's how bad it is. And I think that what we need to do is, number one, we need to do some preventive maintenance on education. And number two, if you think, and I believe every one of my Democratic opponents thinks they want to legalize marijuana in Minnesota. This staff at St. Gabriel's said that it is the gateway drug to not only alcohol, but to opioids. So if you think that marijuana isn't destructive, you're wrong. I've seen it as a police officer. I will fight against allowing legalized marijuana to be used by our folks. Now, we can talk about medicinal purposes. That's a different story. That's a totally different animal. But I've seen the damage that the opioid crisis has done. I have given death notifications to mom and dads that their 19-year-old died of a heroin overdose. It's the worst thing a police officer can do.
Well, the other thing is, as long as there is a demand, there will be a supplier, regardless of who it is.
That's a great point. And I've said that up in Duluth, too. If there's not a demand for it, they wouldn't be here. There is a pipeline. There is a pipeline from Mexico to Chicago, right up to the Midwest. And Little Falls isn't exempt. It hits every community in this nation. And so how do we, if there's not a demand, or if there's a demand, it's going to be here. So how do we stop the demand? It's about educating our youth, helping them understand that you even try this. In this day and age, your chances of the life that you want, the successful life that you want, to have a great family, have a boat or a nice car or a nice home, are diminished greatly when you get addicted to drugs. And I've seen it. I've been in living rooms where the mother and the two daughters are crying on my shoulder because Dad is strung out in the kitchen on heroin, and just 6 months prior he was gainfully employed. Nice house, it affects a broad spectrum of our community, and there's not just one magic bullet. It's going to take collaboration from many of us to make sure that we stop this. And Mark, to your point, I think that when we have drug dealers get arrested on a Friday and they're out the next Friday doing the same thing, we have drug dealers that are waiting on to go to court. They're out on bond. They've been arrested 3 and 4 times.
And they're still out there selling.
Still out there selling. So we have to, as a community, say, you sell drugs to our kids. You're damaging their life. You're taking the future of our young children and old is being taken away. Yeah. And so we have to be serious about the consequences, and we have to put a lot of time and effort into prevention, because all it takes oftentimes is one time, and you can be addicted or you can die.
Okay, you and I and Mark could talk all morning here.
We could have quite a discussion about that whole thing, but that's okay. We don't want to get into that right now.
Yeah, we do have, we want to try and get in a couple of your questions, and we do have someone on the phone. Good morning, you're on up front.
Hi there.
Hi.
My name is John, and I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he said that Pete, you said that you had met Ronald Reagan, and I just wanted to hear about that story. That just sounds like
Is that right?
Such a cool story.
Okay, did you hear? Did you meet President Reagan?
I did, yeah. John, thanks for the question. So, as I stated, I played Division I hockey at a little university, Lake Superior State University in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. And in 1988, we won the national championship, just like the Minnesota Duluth team won this past year, right?
I remember that program. I remember hearing about that program.
In the late 80s, early 90s, Lake Superior State was like number 1, number 2 in the country for many years. And so, anyways, we won the championship in '88 in Lake Placid, and we were the first Division I national championship team to go visit the president. And I remember that the coach called us all and said, we need to get your birth certificates, social security numbers. It has to go to Secret Service. We're going to see the president. Wow. And I thought, wow. And I remember pulling up to the White House, and I remember the gate we went through. It was like I was in awe. It was the first time I was in D.C.
Sure.
And the grass was green. And Sault Ste. Marie was still snowing there, you know. the grass was green. And
you thought you got into the Garden of Eden.
we went into a room just outside the Oval Office, and we were able to meet President Reagan. We all took a picture together with the president, and then we took individual pictures. I have the individual picture with myself with President Reagan, and I remember meeting him and say, "This is the leader of the free world." He was tall. His suit was perfect. He had a nice handshake and a nice smile. And he said, "Congratulations," and that's what we all went through. You know, all the players went through the line. But that moment, it gets bigger and bigger for me, because history has shown he was a great president.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
History,
best in my lifetime.
Did you have an interest in politics at that time?
Not at all. Not at all. No interest in politics at all at that point. I was 22 years old, and I remember I look back at that incident and say, I was really a fortunate person to be able to meet what I would consider the greatest president that this country's ever had. He's, like I say, history has shown that he did a lot of good work.
He should be on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, should we try and take one more call before the break here? Okay, good morning. You're on up front.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
I just want to thank all of you for what you do. You do an amazing job, and the interview is awesome, too. And if I could put a happy birthday out to your loyal listener who's listening right now. He's turning 60 tomorrow, and it's Kevin Michael.
Very good. Well, happy birthday to Kevin Michael. 60.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Welcome to your 60s.
Right. Yeah.
I've been there for a while.
Good luck on the 60s, yeah. All right. Thank you for the call. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Weather update brought to you by Accurate Hearing Services. If you have trouble hearing, schedule a no-obligation hearing evaluation with the audiologist at Accurate Hearing Services in Little Falls. 616-6850 or on the web at accuratehearingservices.com. Life is better with accurate hearing.
Look for sunny to partly cloudy skies for this afternoon with high temperatures reaching up into the mid-50s. Then for tonight, partly cloudy skies will drop to a low at 30 degrees. Lots of sunshine making a return for your Saturday into the upper 50s. Even milder by Sunday, highs around 64 degrees, still expecting lots of sunshine, and partly to mostly sunny skies Monday up to 64. I'm meteorologist Michael Carroll for AM 960 KLTF, Little Falls. Currently, it's 39.
Right now, take an additional 10% off the sale price of all remaining mattresses and box springs in stock at Falls Furniture in Little Falls. An additional 10% off the sale price of all remaining mattresses and box springs at Falls Furniture in Little Falls.
Saturday mornings on KLTF, it's the Wayback Show just after 6:30. I look back to some of the shows and charts and some of the music from yesteryear. Join us also for News Week in Review between 8:30 and 9, and also a check at Farm News Week in Review, On the House at 10, and the News at noon, Saturday on KLTF.
Welcome back to Up Front, and we wish the Wild well.
With that music, I feel like I'm at the XL.
Yeah.
After this weekend, you won't be able to play that again until next winter, so.
Oh, come on.
I'm kind of a pessimist when it comes to the Wild.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're down to the final few minutes, and I'm sorry, no more calls today, please. And we had mentioned that we might not be able to take them, but I'm glad we got a couple of them in. Heard a couple of good stories. But in our final few minutes here, Pete, how do we want to wrap this up? You have a few things you want to add?
You know, I can say that out on the campaign trail, I have met some great people, and Little Falls is a great community. I want to share something with you real quick before I wrap this up. My father was a janitorial supply salesman, and our camping trips consisted of going with him on the road when we were younger, and he would go to the creamers, he would go to the schools, anywhere he could sell his janitorial supplies, and that was our 3 or 4 day vacation once a summer, and would come to Little Falls, and my father called me last night, and he says, "Pete, where are you at?" And I said, "Little Falls," and he said, "Oh, they're great people there. Let me tell you, the people I met," and this was 30 years ago, so nothing has changed, some wonderful people. I'm really proud of our campaign we announced in July of last year, and the synergy and the energy that we're receiving. You know, this is, I talked about the 8th Congressional District for the Republicans is the #1 pickup in the entire country. And what we need to do is we need to continue the momentum. Our message is resonating. I've been in all 18 counties. We have volunteers in all of our counties. You're going to see us out at parades. There's not going to be anybody that's going to work harder than me, you know, and if I may be so bold, I'd like to mention my website to your listeners.
Certainly, very definitely.
It's really simple. It's PeteStauberForCongress.com. And there's a volunteer button, a news button, and if you want to donate, we understand that to run a campaign, finances is a big part of it, to get our message out and what have you. So it's just PeteStauberForCongress.com.
And you spell Stauber how?
Stauber.
Okay, just like it's.
All right, although I Googled it this morning, and I got as far as Pete, and you came up the first one on the list.
Oh, good.
So
that's good. But the campaign's going very well. To folks in Little Falls in the area, you're going to see me a lot. I am a hard worker. Our message is resonating, and we're looking forward to the campaign. We don't know which Democratic candidate's going to come out of their competitive primary, but I feel very comfortable that our message is the right message for the 8th Congressional District. And, you know, I tell people I lived my message. I'm a small business owner and have been for 28 years. I've lived as a police officer, and you talk about my support for the Second Amendment. I am the only candidate that is pro-life in this race. I believe in conception to natural death. I have a special needs child who has Down syndrome, 15 years old. And when the doctor and the nurse say, tells my wife and I, well, there's the blood tests show a chromosome disorder. Do you think this abortion is part of your thought process? No way. Our Isaac is a blessing, unexpected blessing to us, and so I'm living. I have 4 teenage children that we're working together, and my wife and I. They call us They call me the blue collar, common sense conservative, and I think that's resonating. That's who we are.
The only thing really that people ask who vote for you or vote for any other candidate is do what you say you're going to do.
Right. Yeah.
Just follow through. And Donald Trump has done that to an extent, and
so
people
far.
appreciate
and
that.
He's trying to do it anyway, so that's all we really ask.
When I'm elected, you're going to see the St. Pete Stauber in Congress fighting for the values. Nothing is going to change. I'm not going there to be a robot.
Yeah. So, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in, Pete. I suppose if somebody wants to volunteer or donate, they can do that through your website, correct?
Absolutely.
So if you like what you've heard today, you might want to check out that website.
Yeah.
PeteStauberForCongress.com. That's the website, or just simply search it with your particular search engine. A thank you to Pete Stauber, also Mark and Steve co-hosting today's program. Up front, back on Monday morning in 71 hours here on AM 960 KLTF Little Falls. SRN News. Party Line is next.
From townhall.com. I'm Lynn.